Sunday morning, everyone, and welcome to a pretty esoteric uh, chapter, or at least the opening of a couple of very esoteric chapters of Accidental Christ. And it deals with the curious relationship, even in the white bread Bible, New Testament Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Uh, the curious relationship between uh, Jesus, Martha, Mary, her sister Mary, and Lazarus or Lazar. Why was Jesus at their house all the time? Uh, well, anyway, I hope you've been following along. If not, please get yourself a copy, a free copy, if you will, on Kindle, if you have Kindle uh, Unlimited, of Accidental Christ. Uh, if you don't, or if you already have the hardbound edition, uh, you're lucky. But anyway, continuing on with Sunday school. It opens with an epigram from St. John 11, verse 5. Now, Jesus loved Martha and Mary and Lazar. The days that followed the disciples' departure were surprisingly agreeable. As always, Brother Apollonius was the soul of discretion, and Lazar and Martha wisely resolved never to pursue the history of Mary's relationship with Jesus. But we know. Each day, Lazar went to Jerusalem to gather news from Brother Matthias. While he was gone, Brother Apollonius and Martha conspired like matchmakers to give Mary and Jesus time alone together in the house. They went to the marketplace or busied themselves in other parts of the house. It wasn't a burden for Brother Apollonius, who found himself increasingly attracted to Martha. It wasn't long before Mary and Jesus were conspiring to give Martha and Brother Apollonius time alone together. Jesus loved this taste of family life, and even more, loved awakening each morning without a past or a future. For a brief moment, he fantasized about the joys of a householder. The bliss became nearly unbearable the evening of Lazar's 18th birthday. Martha prepared his favorite dishes, and both the women talked of their mother and shared precious memories of baby Lazar. Jesus and Brother Apollonius had tales to tell also. After all, they had known the lad since he was 6 years old. If we were on the mountain now, I would be eligible to be raised perfect master, Lazar boasted to his sisters. You are still eligible, Brother Apollonius chuckled. You're just not on the mountain. But what if I'm never able to return? These are troubled times, and the future is uncertain. Perhaps my days will end prematurely. Is there nowhere but the mountain where the ceremony can be administered? These matters are tiresome to your sisters. See how they yawn, Jesus said, obviously trying to change the subject. Perhaps we'll discuss it later. The following day, when Lazar had left for Jerusalem and the women were at the market, the two perfect masters discussed the feasibility of raising their friend to the sublime degree. Jesus doubted the ceremony could be successfully executed in the field, but Brother Apollonius was anxious to at least explore the possibility. In 10 years on the mountain, you and I officiated at the raising of nearly 40 perfect masters. Not one perished. Even the abbot said he had never seen a more talented initiatory team. But we were on the mountain. Remember what's involved. Even under the ideal circumstances, the ordeal is nearly as strenuous for the officers as for the candidate. Jesus was not exaggerating. The ceremony whereby a man is raised from death to life was a complex and grueling marathon. Even for the skilled adepts of the Carmelite monastery, the procedure was fraught with danger. For 28 days prior to initiation, the candidate was isolated from the community in a windowless chamber and tutored by the meditation master. Each day he was allowed to drink only a small amount of rainwater and eat only a spoonful of paste made from mashed apples, raisins, and royal honey. The daily routine was relentless in its tedium. 2 hours of instruction, 2 hours of meditation, 1 hour for food and bathing, 2 hours for sleep. After 3 days, After 3 days, even the most attentive candidate could no longer reckon the hour or the day. Within a fortnight, he found it hard to discriminate between waking consciousness and dream. After 3 weeks, the words of the meditation master took visible form in the mind of the candidate and echoed as visual images across the screen of perpetual twilight. 3 days before the ceremony itself, the instruction period was discontinued, and the candidate was allowed to recline on the floor, while the meditation master led him on a guided meditation of death. At this point, his consciousness could be plucked from his body like an overripe fig and guided through the wondrous and terrible membranes of post-mortem existence. With the meditation master acting as psychopump, he was led in vision to the very threshold of absorption into Godhead. Extreme care was taken, however, to terminate the sessions before the supreme instant of ecstatic dissolution. It would be necessary for the pilgrim to take that step alone during the final ordeal. The candidate had no idea when the day of his initiation had arrived. The routine was followed as usual. But on that day, his food was laced with a powerful drug made from the gall of a venomous fish. Within seconds of swallowing his last supper, he suffered profound paralysis. His breathing stopped, his body temperature dropped dramatically, and his heartbeat became imperceptible. To all outward appearances, he was dead. At this point, only the most experienced observer could determine whether or not physical death had actually occurred. The master physician was called into the chamber to examine the body and to solemnly declare, "Our brother is dead." Meanwhile, the helpless candidate remained entirely conscious of everything that was said and done around him. The body was then laid out, bathed, and wrapped with spices and strips of linen according to with Jewish burial customs. Each act was accompanied by a song or a recitation of scripture. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Followed by a procession of convincing mourners, the body was then paraded outside the monastery gates and taken to the necropolis, there to be laid upon a shallow shelf carved in the wall of a tomb. For death is the destiny of every man. For 3 days, the body lay motionless in the cool silence of the grave. To keep from going mad, the candidate was compelled to fling his consciousness outside the shell of his paralyzed corpse. His only salvation was to reenact the death meditation over and over again until he crossed the final threshold to consummate the supreme marriage of human consciousness with that of the divine. If all was done correctly, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, the venom was neutralized by the natural defenses of the candidate's body. Then, in a meticulously choreographed ceremony, the master physician reanimated the candidate's lungs with a powerfully delivered blow to the chest. When normal breathing resumed, the meditation master removed the burial wrappings and grasped the newly raised perfect master firmly by his right hand and wrist. As he pulled him up to embrace him, he whispered the vivifying word in his ear. This supreme word could never be uttered in life, except by a person serving as master in the act of raising the candidate. Although Jesus wanted to arrange this supreme experience for Lazar, under the proper circumstances, he remained sadly resolute. Much as I love our friend, I'm afraid it would be impossible for you and I alone to raise him. Hear me out, Brother Apollonius said. Then I will say no more. Jesus nodded. I am certain that within a short walk from this house we could secure a small house or building suitable to safely isolate Lazar for a month. I'm also certain that you and I, working together in shifts, could serve both as meditation master and physician. Perhaps Jesus agreed, but it might kill us both. Brother Apollonius continues, we have the ceremony memorized. We've done it many times before. We do it better than anybody. I know where I can secure fresh venom, and I always have at least a half of the embalming materials in my bag. The rest I can purchase locally. Jesus tried to be patient with this line of argument. I concede all that you say is true. Perhaps we could find a house and prepare Lazar for the great crisis. What do we tell his sisters while all of this is happening? We certainly cannot compromise the secrecy of the rite. If we overcome that problem, where on earth do you suggest we bury him? There's no Essene necropolis in Bethany. We will tell his sisters that he has fallen ill with a contagious disease and that he must be isolated for at least a month of treatment. Our efforts, of course, will fail, and then we must sadly inform them that the lad is dead. As for the burial, I admit it would not be easy. Failing all else, we could purchase a suitable tomb in the community necropolis south of Bethany and inter him there. Everything would take place exactly as it would on the monastery, except the processional mourners would actually believe Lazar is dead. Jesus was outraged. What a monstrous hoax to suffer upon Martha and Mary. They would never forgive us. Never forgive the man who raised their brother from the dead? Jesus threw his hand in the air as if to wave away a fly. This discussion is ended, my friend. At that moment, Lazar entered through the servants' entrance and shouted to see who was home. Jesus made their presence known in the dining room and asked why he had returned so early. Lazar appeared at the kitchen entrance. His garment was torn and covered in blood, and he was bleeding severely from a cut over his right eye. Seeing this, the two older men rushed to his aid. As they proceeded to dress his wound, he shared his story. Matthias and I were nearly captured by temple soldiers near the Mount of Olives. There have been more arrests. 5 zealoters were stoned to death this morning outside the palace of Caiaphas. For his own security, Joseph of Ramtha has severed communications for at least a fortnight. His last message to you urges you to stay where you are if you are safe. Our enemies believe you have returned to Galilee. Also, there's been an ominous turn of events. I fear we may be undone. As unbelievable as this may sound, many of the aged Essene fathers and former enemies of our plan now see the momentum of the times and are now supporting a coup. But they say they will never recognize you as king. They tell their followers you are a bastard because you were born between the 2 betrothal rites. Many are now calling you the evil priest. They say your brother James is the lawfully born Messiah. Now that we should be fighting the Romans and the Herodians, we turn like children to fight ourselves, Jesus said sadly. Brother Apollonius was furious. But it is Jesus, not James, who has fattened the flock in the last 2 years. It is Jesus who heals the sick and casts out demons and feeds the hungry. Supernatural tricks of the evil priest to deceive the elect, they say. They laugh and say that the flock has a short memory and that you will lead them to smooth things. Lazar is saying this. The Dead Sea elders charge that of late Jesus has done nothing but outrage the Pharisees and sup with the unclean. Brother Apollonius looked Jesus straight in the eyes. Perhaps they would see him raise the dead. I beg your pardon? Lazar looked puzzled. From the side garden, Jesus heard the voices of Martha and Mary as they greeted neighbors on their return from the market. In seconds, they would be in the house. He looked helplessly at Brother Apollonius. He saw his life and the hopes of his friends and elders unraveling before his eyes. He was losing the kingdom, and now he was bringing danger, perhaps death, to his loved ones. Martha and Mary were at the threshold. Jesus could hear the sound of the bolt sliding back. He squatted down in front of Lazar's chair and gripped his hand with the token of his degree. He spoke softly, but with great haste. Illuminated Brother Lazar, you have been tried by this assembly of perfect masters and found worthy to undergo the supreme ordeal. Knowing that the consequences of this ceremony is death, is it your unequivocal will to proceed? For a moment, Lazar could not grasp what was happening. Then it struck him. He looked up at Brother Apollonius and then back at Jesus. "Oh, yes, my lords, yes." "Then your will be done. Consider the ceremony begun. You will follow our instructions without question. When your sisters arrive, they must believe that you are gravely ill." Brother Apollonius rushed to the door and stopped Mary and Martha in the kitchen and pushed them back through the door. "Ladies, you cannot enter. Your brother has fallen seriously ill. See here his blood on the doorstep. It issues from his bowels. It is a highly contagious malady. It can be deadly, but the Master and I have experience with it. We must immediately remove Lazar from your home and isolate him from the community until his contagion passes." The women were stunned and demanded to see Lazar from within the house. He shouted to his sisters, "Martha, Mary, please do not come in. Listen to the masters, please." Jesus joined Apollonius at the doorway. "Mary, I'm afraid we must impose upon you further. Without alerting the neighborhood, we need you to secure for us an isolated house near here. We can pay whatever is necessary, but you must do it quickly. Your brother's life depends upon it." "If he must be isolated, then let it be here. Martha and I can stay with our cousins in Jerusalem for as long as necessary." This alternative had not occurred to Jesus or Brother Apollonius. It was ideal. They immediately accepted Mary's offer. "I'm afraid you must leave right now. Brother Apollonius will escort you to Jerusalem to learn your location. He will visit you there in a few days. Whatever you do, do not come back here or send anyone else. When this is over, we will send for you and help you cleanse your home. I'm sorry, but this must be." Jesus turned and entered the house. He shut the door behind him and stood perfectly still and listened as Brother Apollonius tried to comfort the sisters. Lying to Mary was the most difficult thing Jesus had ever done. When he was sure they were gone, he walked through the house and carefully examined each chamber. The largest room in the house was the lavatory, obviously constructed to Roman tastes. It housed an enormous communal bath. A large double door opened to the courtyard and well. The chamber was also accessible from two parts of the house. One door opened from the kitchen and one from a short hall adjacent to the master's sleep chamber. Jesus decided that the master's sleep chamber would serve as Lazar's cell for the month-long ordeal. Its proximity to the lavatory made it ideal, for Lazar would be required to ceremonially bathe each day. He moved a few unnecessary items from the chamber and then called Lazar. "Illuminated brother, this room is your temple. You will leave it only when instructed. Do you understand?" "Yes, my lord." "Illuminated brother, you shall now bathe yourself in cold water and dress in coarse linen. The doors of this temple shall be sealed against the light. It will remain bathed in darkness. For the temple shall no longer illuminate you, but by you it must be illuminated." It gets better tomorrow. And I hope you will be here to enjoy it. Until then, I have a Masonic event to attend virtually in just a short while, so that's why I'm dressed like this. It'll be for the the Texas Freemasons. So I'll announce when the recording of that event will be viewable. So until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself. Be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will.